Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 193. A Less Than Triumphant Return. All Might's press conference had aired yesterday evening, and Izuku had been up all night reading various public outcries about him stepping down from hero work. People were catastrophizing about it even without knowing what was about to happen to the country's new number one. Endeavor's career was about to go up in flames, and once that happened, well, he supposed it was a bridge to cross when they got to it. Needless to say, Izuku was exhausted. He was thankful that the camp makeup days were only half days. His energy was dipping into the negatives, and it was barely midday. Still, he went about his training diligently. He could rest later. Cementos' constructs weren't going to obliterate themselves, so he kept going. Izuku's head shot up when he heard a familiar voice thanking someone at the door. All Might was here? One of Ectoplasm's clones was holding the door open for him. He was in a wheelchair and propelling himself forward at a snail's pace, but he was here. Izuku could tell he had makeup on for the press conference already, but the gaunt look under his eyes now only solidified that observation. He didn't look good, but he looked miles better than he had when Izuku had visited him in the hospital. All Might! Kirishima exclaimed. His shouting caught the rest of the class's attention. 18 heads all whipped over in unison, and the moment of distraction was all it took. Izuku heard one of Bakugo's explosions go off, and a boulder of debris started falling straight for where All Might sat. Izuku didn't even think about what he was doing until the hunk of debris was turning into a fine dust under his foot. The impact was enough to shake the building's foundation, but Izuku was more concerned about the dust being just as bad for All Might's lung as being crushed to death. So he quickly clapped his hands together hard enough to blow all of the particulate toward the walls, where it slid harmlessly to the ground. The whole thing was over in a couple of seconds, and Izuku's attention turned to Bakugo. He was standing above him on one of the platforms Cementos had created, but he took a tentative step back when Izuku's eyes fell on him. He felt One for All get ripped out from under his feet at the same time and shifted his glare over to Eraser. He had his quirk activated, and he was giving Izuku a warning look. All Might was sitting right next to Eraser now, still partially wrapped in his capture weapon. Izuku bit down on a hysterically relieved laugh. All Might would have been fine even if he hadn't stepped in. He forced in a shaky breath and did his best to let that observation calm him. Thank you, Midoriya. Everyone, please resume your training. Eraser addressed the class. Everyone but Izuku went back to their tasks slowly and reluctantly. His hands were shaking, and he felt a phantom chill just left of center in his chest. All Might was fine. He swore he could smell this familiar scent of blood-soaked concrete. Nothing happened. He looked at All Might and saw dead eyes and red-stained hair. Everything was all right. His breaths were pathetic, wheezing things pinned to his chest. My boy, why don't you take a seat with me for a moment? All Might offered. When he failed to respond, Eraser took the handles on All Might's chair and started pushing him toward Izuku. When they reached him, he shifted one hand to Izuku's shoulder and started pushing both of them toward the door. You can leave early. I'm going to wrap up class. We're meeting in the same conference room as last time. Be there by 1:15. Eraser dismissed them both at the door. Izuku numbly took the handles from Eraser and pushed All Might away from the danger of the gymnasium. That was quite an eventful entrance, All Might tried to joke. Izuku just kept pushing him away from the gym. I can push myself. Come around here and let me see you. That was a powerful kick. I think that training camp worked wonders. You're not hurt, are you? All Might continued. Izuku didn't stop until they were in the conference room. He pushed All Might toward the head of the table on the side furthest from the door before sitting down on his other side. The door had shut behind them, and Izuku resisted the urge to lock it. Nothing was going to happen, and even if it did, it would have to get through him before it got to All Might. "Are you hurt?" All Might asked again once he settled. "Sorry, no, I'm fine," he finally answered. "It's good to see you. I know you visited in Camino, but I hardly remember a thing. You look well." All Might pressed again. Yeah, I'm all good now. Just had a broken collarbone," he reminded him. "It looks like someone must have gotten you pretty good here." All Might pointed out the new scar on his jaw. "Oh, yeah, my jaw got dislocated, but it popped back in on its own," he explained. "Getting out of a fight with Muscular with nothing but a broken collarbone and a dislocated jaw is no easy feat. That could have ended much more poorly," All Might praised. Izuku shrank in on himself. "You heard about that?" "Naomasa gave me the full files on the camp incident," All Might admitted. Izuku cringed. "You did what you had to do, my boy. Don't feel bad for surviving," All Might replied. His tone was kind, but Izuku refused to meet his eyes. He had acted like a monster that night, and he wasn't proud of it. Why don't we talk about more pleasant things? We have a little over half an hour before the council assembles. Have you managed to fit in any summer activities this break?" Izuku shook his head. "No, I figured that was the case. We should go enjoy that nice clean beach before school starts up again. Make sure nothing's been dumped there while we're at it," All Might offered. Izuku hadn't been to the beach just to go to the beach in well over a decade. He remembered an old picture of him and Kachan looking like a pair of lobsters after refusing to stay still long enough for the sunscreen to soak into their skin. But he didn't really remember the day itself. "That sounds nice," he answered flatly. "Brilliant! Maybe we can work it into your rigorous punishment schedule and invite your friends as well." Izuku huffed out a laugh and nodded absently. The smell of blood still lingered in his nose. All Might's hand, resting on his shoulder, pulled him back to the present. "I'm all right, my boy," he insisted. Izuku held his gaze until it was too much. He nodded his head and closed his eyes. "I felt you die." The words tumbled from his mouth before he could stop them. He heard All Might take in a sharp breath and felt the grip on his shoulder tighten. "It was cold, wasn't it?" All Might asked. Izuku opened his eyes in surprise. All Might was looking at him with a sad understanding. He thought about Nana and felt his brow furrow. He couldn't find the words to respond, so he just nodded again. "I'm so sorry," All Might apologized. Izuku felt tears rolling down his cheeks and wiped them away quickly. "It's not your fault," he dismissed, though he's sure his shaking voice did nothing to ease the other man's guilt. All Might wheeled himself around the table and pulled him into a hug. "I'm so sorry," he repeated into the crown of Izuku's head. Izuku tried to hold himself together, but the attempt was in vain. All Might's grip held him so much tighter than it had in the hospital, and the sheer relief of that shattered his resolve. He cried into his shoulder and hugged him back as hard as he dared. Shota dismissed class precisely on time and made his way to the conference room post-haste. He didn't really have anything to prepare, but at the very least he couldn't stress about being late if he was already there. Hisashi would be there soon anyway, so he wouldn't be alone for long. Or he wouldn't be alone at all, he supposed, upon opening the door to see Izuku crying into Yagi's shoulder. He felt a spike of envy, but crushed it down as swiftly as it appeared. He had to be careful what he wished for. He had gotten Ivy back, but it seemed like he had lost Izuku in the process. He tried to convince himself that it didn't matter who Izuku went to for comfort so long as he went to someone, but the reassurance was paltry at best. If Izuku needed someone to curse at, it might as well be him. At least he was alive to do it. Yagi gave him a sad smile over Izuku's shoulder, and he slowly backed out of the room. Hizashi showed up just as he quietly shut the door. "Give them a minute. Izuku's in there with Yagi," he said in response to his husband's questioning look. "Ah, is he all right?" "No. Bakugo almost flattened him in the gym, and Izuku damn near went ballistic." Hizashi cringed. "Everyone's fine, physically," he reassured before they got a chance to ask. "Silver lining, I guess?" Shota answered with a non-committal hum. "You all right?" Hizashi pressed. "Not the time." He dodged the question. Hizashi thankfully let the matter be. They stood there in silence until Nedzu showed up at 1:15 on the dot. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. What are we waiting for?" he greeted. "Yagi and Izu are having a moment. Think we're good to go now?" Hizashi answered, turning his question to Shota. He just shrugged before opening the door. Izuku's eyes were still red and puffy, but he had gotten himself under control. He didn't meet Shota's eyes when he entered, but he had acknowledged his presence, which was good enough. He knew Izuku wouldn't want them to postpone this on account of his breakdown, so he started the meeting as if he'd seen nothing. "Yagi, do you have any idea what could be happening with One for All?" No, I haven't got the faintest clue," Yagi replied, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. I know what's happening," Izuku spoke up. Shota valiantly restrained himself from smashing his head into the table. How many things was that little shit keeping from them? "Please, enlighten us, Midoriya-kun," Nedzu replied cheerfully. The kid's focus drifted between each of them before it settled on Yagi. He took a deep breath and rubbed his face with his hands before he spoke. The past users of One for All are... There's no way to make this sound like I haven't lost my mind," he muttered to himself before continuing. "The past users of One for All are in my head? I talked to them? Jeez." He trailed off and cursed under his breath again. For a brief moment, Shota worried that Izuku had finally broken under the pressure. He dismissed the notion outright. Izuku wouldn't say another word if he thought they didn't believe him. So he was going to believe him for now. "What do you mean by that, kiddo?" Hizashi asked with a level of caution that bordered on patronizing. "Shota kicked him under the table." "I swear, I'm not making this up. I can prove it. Probably." Izuku sounded hesitant before turning to Yagi. "Your predecessor was Nana Shimura, right? She was tall, had shoulder-length black hair. She wore yellow gloves and a white cape," he insisted a little frantically. Seeing Yagi's surprised face added at least 3 years to Shota's lifespan. Yes, that's all true," Yagi confirmed. He could see tension bleeding out from Hizashi's shoulders. "And her predecessor was Taiutai-en. He was a shorter guy who wore a high-collared jacket and had short brown hair." Izuku continued. "That I don't know. Nana didn't like to talk about her predecessor," Yagi admitted. Izuku's shoulders slumped. "They're the reason Hitoshi's quirk worked while I was injured. I would have been knocked out of the brainwashing if they weren't fighting against me too. Eraser, you know how his quirk works. You know that what he did was impossible. Please tell me you believe me," he insisted, eyes darting between everyone in the room. "I believe you," Shota affirmed without hesitation. Izuku slumped fully into the table in front of him and let out a muffled, "Thank fuck," into the wood grain. "Language, Midoriya-kun," Nezu chastised him. Izuku sat up straight again and muttered an apology. "So, the energy vine thing, was that a past user's quirk or something?" Hizashi asked. Izuku's expression lit up, presumably because Hizashi seemed to believe him too. Yes, that was the fifth quirk, Daigoro Banjo, Black Whip, he answered. Oh, gosh. Shota groaned, already feeling the impending headache. He could see the kid biting down on a laugh, and Nezu had that off-putting smile plastered on his face. How many more will there be then? Yagi didn't have a quirk, and the first user's quirk became one for all. I presume those premonitions you mentioned having is another one? So that would mean there's up to 4 more, correct? Nezu spoke his thoughts aloud. Yes, that's what Banjo said, but I didn't get to ask what they were, Izuku answered. Nana's quirk was called Float. It let her float. She could fly using One for All to propel her. Yagi informed the group. Izuku was damn near beaming with stars in his eyes. Shota could feel the 3 years fall off the end of his lifespan again. This was going to be such a shit show. How the hell were they supposed to explain this away? Did you talk to her? Is she still... Yagi trailed off. Shota had never seen his weathered features look so young. He remembered how Izuku had been damn near catatonic in the hospital when he had thought All Might was dead, and he could imagine that Yagi had gone through something similar, but hadn't been quite as lucky as Izuku was. It probably wasn't dissimilar to losing a parent, and Shota could imagine her demise wasn't a peaceful one. I did. Well, I'm not really sure how it works. They can kind of see through me, I think. You could probably talk to her, but I can't see her unless I'm sleeping or brainwashed. Honestly, it might have been the hospital drugs. I haven't heard from them since. Fascinating. You've never experienced anything like this, I presume? Nezu asked Yagi. No. He shook his head emphatically. Perhaps it's One for All growing stronger, and maybe it's got to do with altering the mind. Opioids are certainly one way to achieve that, though that would have applied to you as well. Have you ever partaken in hallucinogenics, Yagi? Everyone's attention turned to the man in question. Yagi didn't answer the question, which, in turn, answered it well enough. Izuku poorly concealed a laugh, and Hizashi stared at him with his jaw agape. Have you ever been affected by a mental-type quirk similar to Shinsokun's? Nezu asked, completely ignoring the awkward situation he'd created. Yes, years ago, though it wasn't quite the same. It's likely an evolution then, Nezu mused aloud. Shota tucked his face into his capture weapon and watched Yagi stew in the awkward moment for his own amusement before he spoke up. We have somewhere to be in 45 minutes. We need to figure out how we're going to explain this to the general populace sooner rather than later, he prompted the group. With the public knowing who All for One is, I think they're going to make their own assumptions. So long as we can quell rumors of Midoriya working with the League, it might be best to let them believe what they want, Yagi offered. That doesn't... Shoji, Shinso, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Tokoyami all saw Black Whip before I was taken. Not to mention anyone from the League can discount that as well, Izuku pointed out. Indeed, Nezu agreed. Contemplative silence fell over the room before he spoke again. I believe feigning ignorance may be our only option, at least for the time being. Without knowing the scope of the quirks you'll have access to, we can't yet weave a web, lest we end up stuck in it down the line. What do you think, Midoriya-kun? I was thinking the same thing. Shinso and Uraraka haven't questioned me, saying I was a late bloomer. They might just be being nice about it, though, Izuku replied. Yeah, the media isn't going to drop that scoop so easily, Hizashi pointed out. Well, I believe the only potential detriment to insisting it is a quirk we don't yet understand would be interested parties wanting to run tests. Rest assured, I will not let that happen, even over my dead body. For now, let's call it an energy manipulation quirk. That's something vague enough to manifest in a wide array, I think. Nedzu insisted calmly, though his countenance betrayed how fiercely he meant that promise. It's vague enough to be true, technically. That might even pass a lie detector quirk like Naomasa's, Yagi posited. Precisely. Are we all in agreement then, gentlemen? Nedzu asked the group. Everyone nodded. Our next step should be trying to contact the vestiges again to learn their quirks. Perhaps Shinso-kun could help us with that? Nedzu mused aloud. Can we try hallucinogenics instead? Izuku groaned and slouched in his seat. No! He and Hizashi answered at the same time. Izuku had a shit-eating grin on his face as he looked over at Yagi, who was beet red. Why not? All Might got to do it, Izuku complained with sarcastic petulance. It's legal in the States. I was in my 20s, Yagi defended. Izuku started laughing at him, and it was contagious enough to pull a smile from Nedzu. Shota didn't bother hiding his chuckle because it only made Yagi's blush worse, which in turn fed the vicious cycle of laughter. Despite the blush on his face, Yagi was looking at Izuku with an adoring smile. They wrapped up the meeting shortly thereafter with just enough time to get Izuku to his therapy appointment. They'd been listening to the radio as they drove, but once Izuku got out of the car, Hizashi turned it off, shifting their focus to him entirely. What's going on, Sho? They asked. He didn't answer them at first. He pulled the car away from the curb and joined the flow of traffic on the street to give himself a moment to gather his thoughts. I wanted Ivy back so badly, but now they're all I'm getting. Don't really have the right to complain, do I? Oh, Sho. You know he only shouts at you because he's comfortable enough to do it, right? He still looks at me like I'm going to slap him whenever he pokes fun at me, Hizashi pointed out. He does not, he said exasperatedly. Okay, that's a bit dramatic, but he does falter. He's flinched a few times. That's 'cause you wave your arms around like a crazy person when you talk, Shota countered. Yeah, okay, whatever. You miss Izuku then, right? It's stupid. It's not stupid. Nedzu was telling me you both said some nasty stuff to each other while I was gone. Maybe if you apologize, you'll get our sweet little Izuku back. He's probably matching your energy, Hizashi mused. You're probably right, he conceded. I'm always right. How many times do we have to have this talk? Shota rolled his eyes and changed the subject. What do you want to do about his involvement in the case? I don't want him anywhere near the case, Hizashi answered readily. Well, it's too late for that. I know. I saw how stressed that kid made you as Ivy. I should have seen this coming. Shota scoffed a bitter laugh. Yeah, this is pretty par for the course, isn't it? I don't think we can keep him from this case, and he's just going to hate us for trying. He's too smart. He'll find a way to hide from us no matter what we do. So you're saying we should encourage it? Hizashi asked, clearly not thrilled with the prospect. It's the only way we'll be able to keep an eye on him, he insisted. And he's not wrong. I've seen him work. He's not incompetent. He just needs someone to keep him in check when he gets in over his head. I don't like this, Hizashi answered. I don't know that there's another option. Hizashi just sighed and nodded. They pulled up in front of the radio station and Shota parked the car to let him out. See you for dinner, babe. They bid him farewell with a chaste kiss to his temple. End of chapter.